Il regista Quentin Tarantino. L'altro grande protagonista del film, Leonardo Di Caprio.
I think from the onset, well, first off, Quentin's script was so brilliant, bringing these two characters, a relationship between a stuntman and an actor that are sort of on the outskirts of Hollywood, looking in at a changing culture and a changing industry, and simultaneously trying to survive. But what was so interesting about his approach was that it's a slice of life. It's a couple days. And I think a lot of the original conversations that Quentin and I had was, how do we portray, the soul of a character within a matter of days? And a lot of that had to do with my character working on a TV show that he didn't necessarily want to be working on, feeling like he's the heavy, the sort of punching bag to a new generation of actors, while he's been sort of left behind. And so our creative process was in figuring out those moments, those details that would really, give the audience the sort of pathos of who this man was. And that resulted in a lot of the stuff with the messing up of the lines, the freak out in the trailer, and the sort of whole idea that he, the character might be bipolar, and he's dealing with the anxiety of the fact that he is mortal, and the culture is moving on, and the industry is moving on despite him. Well, I definitely had seen The Great Escape, but one of the privileges of being an actor is being exposed to not only time periods but subject matters that aren't necessarily in your wheelhouse. And as you all know, I'm sure, Quentin is a true cinephile. And not just a cinephile, he knows almost equally as much about television and music. So I got to be exposed to an era of 1950s cowboy television, sort of B and pulp cowboy movies, films that I never would have stopped to go see, but he has this incredible respect for those films, equally as much as all the masterworks that we all, respect. And he's honed in on a lot of different actors to be the influence for this character, from Eddie Burns to Ty Hardin, but there was one actor in particular named Ralph Meeker, and it was amazing to see his respect for an actor that I had never been exposed to, that most people historically might not remember, but going through their sort of filmography and their entire their entire life's work, and looking at that with great respect and an investigation into how somebody like that might be forgotten in time. And that was really the basis of creating Rick, that he may not get all the roles he wants, but he still made his cinematic and television contribution, which is something that he may not realize himself. It was fascinating because you think of 1969 and why this film sort of lands at this specific time period. I started Googling all the cultural things that happened in 69, all the films that came out in 69. Literally is this massive turning point in American history, and certainly American cinema, which I think really paved the way to our heroes, the director-driven era, where directors were, it is a director's medium, and they had the power during that time period to make some of the most memorable films ever. So it really is this not only cultural turning point, but cinema. I grew up very young watching films, and I never feel like I will be able to achieve what my heroes have achieved ever. So it's this constant race to try to better myself, to try to work on, better movies, better characters, do as much as I possibly can, because they have done so much, and I'll never feel equal. So that's how I feel.
I think in some ways I'm very happy to be working in the era that I'm working in. I feel like so many roles these days for females are so exciting and kind of groundbreaking, but it's not that that didn't exist back then. I think it was, I maybe more shocking back then, but watching films from the 60s, 70s, 50s, there's so many films I absolutely love, and I know Hollywood's changed a lot, especially in the time period that this film takes place, the shift between 65 and 69 kind of, paved the way for the 70s and all the movies that came then, and I think Hollywood's going through a similar sort of shift, and content is again seeming groundbreaking and exciting. But no, I adore movies from that time period as much as I do now.
Well, some of the movies we talk about in this film, I actually saw in '69, or maybe I saw them in 1970 and the lower half of a double feature, because movies could hang around for a year in the theaters back then. So, like in the case of The Wrecking Crew, I saw that. I saw that when it came out when I was 6, and it was actually interesting. I remember. I obviously knew who Dean Martin was because I was already a fan of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis movies. And he was just one of the biggest celebrities in the world at that time. Everyone knew who he was, even 6-year-olds. I went and saw, my parents took me to see it, and I was completely taken with Sharon Tate in that movie. If you've ever seen the movie, she gives a very funny performance. She plays this kind of klutzy secret agent. And she had a gift as a light comedian that was actually pretty good, and it was even fun watching her kind of execute these pratfalls and execute this kind of slapstick comedy. As a 6-year-old, you love slapstick comedy. That's probably your favorite thing in the world. All right? So to see this cute girl actually just stumble and fall and trip and fall into mud and all, never kind of lose her aplomb, it was completely charming. I was totally taken with her. And the movie actually ends with a great gag at the end that just ends the whole movie. It brought the house down. I'm telling you, I remember sitting at the Garfield Theater in San Gabriel, and it brought the effing house down. And I also did, I think, was part of the inspiration for me writing kind of the scene with Margot. I actually did exactly what Sharon does in the movie. When the film was out, oddly enough, the theater that I was at had a patio similar to the Bruin. And so I liked her so much that when me and my parents walked out of the theater, I went to the poster to look to see who that was. And I looked at the lobby cards, and they were the same lobby cards I used. And I'm like, oh, who was Miss Carlson? And they go, oh, it was Sharon Tate. Oh, okay, cool. She's in Valley of the Dolls. And I'd never seen Valley of the Dolls, but I knew of it. Everyone was talking about that movie at that time. And so, now, I think The Wrecking Crew is an asinine movie now. It's really silly. Now, I'm actually a huge fan of the director, Phil Carlson. I just don't like that movie that much. I think it's a little silly. But she's just as charming and just as terrific as she ever was. And I'm also really, as I always felt. But I even like the idea that we show the clip of the movie in itself. So I like seeing Sharon Tate and Nancy Kwan. I'm a huge Nancy Kwan fan too, to just pop up in the middle of the movie and have a fight scene choreographed by Bruce Lee. I think that's just a really lovely thing. I feel this is the third film. I feel Bastards was the first, and Django was the second, and this is the end of that trilogy.
Thank you very much. This is one of the more soulful press conferences I've ever been to. È stata una buona estate.
Grazie.